Hello.
What's precise, efficient, and not making too big of a deal about its capabilities? The somewhat unsuspecting Santa Cruz Hightower hits a bullseye directly on the definition of the term modern mountain bike.
Rocco's jealous. He wants on camera too. Maybe Rocco needs an Instagram. Let me know in the comments if Rocco needs an Instagram. Last time we talked about Santa Cruz bikes, it was regarding this Bronson right here. I bought this bike at the end of last year, put it together, and I had a blast on it. More fun than I expected, to be honest. Fast forward to today, enough folks shared that video of the Bronson with Santa Cruz, I was able to get a loaner media bike to do a review about a highly requested model, the Hightower. Well, I love the Bronson. The one thing I wanted to change, 29-inch rear wheel. Hightower has that. Let's check this thing out and see what it's like. Got our helper.
Careful, SpongeBob! Careful, SpongeBob! SpongeBob, careful! Careful, SpongeBob! Careful, SpongeBob!
Nice. I can't see anything. Can't do it. Okay. Yeah, pink on maroon on pink. Pink on maroon, which is on top, yes. I should give a big thanks to Jensen USA. I'm rocking my Jensen cap today. Jensen is a leading online retailer here in the United States of America, and they're an online retailer for Santa Cruz bikes. I'm gonna link to all the Hightower models over at Jensen USA down in the description below. Anything you purchase from those links will help support my channel. It's how we make these videos happen. Huge thanks to Jensen. They've been one of my biggest supporters over the years, and I'm stoked they're now carrying Santa Cruz. If you're curious about all the details of the Hightower, the geometry, the various prices and part specs that are available, click that link in the description below. Check it all out over at Jensen USA, and let me know in the comments if you have any questions.
Before we get into the details, let's back up. Who is this bike for? Most of the bikes on my channel are honestly built to be someone's second mountain bike, or their third, fourth, fifth, whatever. Most of the bikes here are for hardcore enthusiasts, for the papa or mama bears who already know exactly what they want with that new bike. While the Hightower fits into that same vein, it's also one of the absolutely most well-rounded bikes I've ever ridden. The Hightower might just be the ideal open-ended starter bike that would make sense for Goldilocks to get as her first real mountain bike. The Hightower uses dual 29-inch wheels, struts 150mm travel up front with 145mm of rear travel, and has a proven geometry that's equally as capable for backcountry epics as well as for modern jump and flow trails. No, this is not a cross-country bike, as that genre has us thinking anxiety-ridden geometry, firm suspension, and frail limbs. Nor is it a super lengthy, crazy slack or glued to the ground enduro race slayer. Instead, the Hightower feels more like the answer Santa Cruz penciled in when they noticed a lot of people were adding longer forks and more downhill capabilities to their shorter travel Tallboy platform. I need to show some props here. Santa Cruz has always been good at this. If the riding public modifies their bike, such as squeezing in 27.5 wheels, using shorter shocks, angle adjusting headsets, or bigger forks, well, I've noticed that Santa Cruz has a track record of observing this and validating it in future designs. This was the origination of bikes like the original Nomad, which was really just a short shocked VP free, or the Blur 4Cross, which was a slacker, more progressive version of the Blur. The Bronson was the answer to 27.5 wheels on a Blur TR, and the Mega Tower was the answer to folks trying to use this here Hightower as an enduro race bike.
What's a tree?
Santa Cruz is keen to stay on the edge of what's trendy, and they've got a track record of following the right moves at the right time. I do appreciate Santa Cruz's engineering and fit and finish. The bike has minimal gimmicks, with the exception being the in-frame storage, but that's a cancer that affects nearly all bikes these days. The overall package is very well done. I have a few complaints, sure, and we'll get into that, but the big picture is the frame is rock solid. Just like with a pair of scissors, it's a proven design, and at this point, all the moving parts are nicely refined and only sharp where you're expecting.
I do want to mention I am sponsored by one brand, Shimano. I think I got a Shimano shirt, I do. And this bike has no Shimano on it at all. That said, I have a ton of bikes that all have predominantly Shimano parts on them, so I will probably do a few part swaps and stuff I'm just more accustomed to, but I will definitely try this thing out completely bone stock for a couple weeks here before we finish up the whole video.
I rode the bike for a couple of months completely stock with a full SRAM build. The bike was an AXS GX build complete with the AXS transmission drivetrain and the SRAM Code Silver Stealth brakes. The bike had RockShox Ultimate level suspension with a Super Deluxe shock and a Lyric fork. As I tend to do, I would go on to rebuild the Hightower with many of my own personal parts, and I'd use it to test some other unique bits as well.
I think the AI needs to learn the orientation of the gears or something.
The SRAM components worked quite well, and this was actually my best experience to date with both SRAM brakes and transmission. But I needed to crack the code to get to a more familiar braking and updated a download for some faster upshifting, so I installed the same Shimano getup I have on all my bikes with a full XT group set. No, Shimano actually doesn't require that I do this. I do it because I then feel even more comfortable in riding the bike, and I also learn a bit of what it's like to work on a bike like this. I was stoked to see that Santa Cruz includes a bitchin' aluminum universal derailleur hanger to allow for Shimano parts.
There's some really cool little minor details here. They included an aluminum universal derailleur hanger, so if I go ahead and put my Shimano parts on here, I am completely set up to do that out of the box with a very high quality little unit here.
And Santa Cruz's cable routing is absolutely excellent. Overall, this was an easy swap, and I'm wishing it was more common for other brands to make their own aluminum UDH hangers. Sizing. I'm 5 foot 8 inches tall, or 174 centimeters, and the size medium build fit me well, but perhaps being slightly short. It's worth noting that the sizing gaps in the Santa Cruz line are nicely narrow. Sizes medium, large, and extra large grow by only 20 millimeters each. But after a few months on the bike, if I were going to buy my own Hightower, I would still buy a medium. It feels this bike is more intended to be an all-around trail bike and not so much a mini enduro sled.
I'm realizing I like this bike more and more the more I ride it. That happens every video, but this is right here is a good example of why. So the front end at first felt pretty low and the bike was kind of more cross-country feeling, which is cool, which is totally fine. But now I'm adapting, and like this pole right here, where you bunny hop in this like slight turn, and you jump over that braking hole. Now it feels second nature, and the slightly shorter wheelbase, it just fits really good beforehand, and then it's easier to nose into that backside, and the whole thing pops pretty good at the short length. So now I'm learning to lean into what it does well. It always takes a while to kind of get a feeling for bikes, but yeah, this thing's coming along pretty well.
Going up a size would lose some of that magic that perhaps elevates the Hightower above some other bikes in the category. Initially, the cockpit did feel kind of low, and eventually I went to a taller bar, which I greatly preferred. The stock dropper seat post was only 150 millimeters, which was something I noticed on steeper, jumpier trails. I had plenty of clearance in the frame for when I did swap over to a 175 post. I chose a new Fox transfer post, but there are many good 175 options on the market today.
How are we gonna jump? Okay. The seat's pretty high. 150 drop. That's it. Oh, it's gonna manual okay. The brakes are not bedded in. Just try to drop it further because there's no way that's all the way down, but it is. It's a 150 dropper. The bars are so low. Okay.
The ride. So many consumers asking to compare the Hightower to a Ripmo, I expected the Hightower to feel bigger than it actually did. I expected it to tolerate climbing well and to absolutely be a mega sender on the descents, but that wasn't really the story here. The Hightower has much more of an emphasis on efficiency and easy handling, more akin to a lighter trail or even a cross-country bike. Something I really liked about the Hightower was how well it responds to differing riding styles. The bike has enough suspension travel, slack enough head angle, and substantial enough wheelbase to accommodate more of that bludgeoning, wheels on the ground strategy. My more wheels in the air riding style found the slack head angle to corner very well. The short back end was easy to pump, and the wheelbase was short enough that flicking the bike through tight turns was as easy as reading the Apple terms and conditions. Just trust that it'll be okay, charge ahead, consequences be damned.
Come on, traction. Ah! Come roosting out the forest. Remember, kids, walk up hills. It's better for the moss.
Climbing. What I found with the Hightower was a bike that loves to climb its way up nearly anything. The rider's seated posture on the bike is one that's easy to understand and easy to ride from. The seat angle feels somewhat neutral, and the top tube feels fairly short. These attributes make for a bike that's predictable and capable while still seated, which is what you want if you're out pedaling a lot of miles. The more I ride bikes with seat angles in the 76-degree range, like this Hightower here, the more I like them. The rear suspension works fine while climbing, which is to say it doesn't do anything weird or unwanted. The suspension provides an efficient platform that drives the bike forward nicely, and it maintains plenty of grip to get through rocks, roots, and steeper bits of trail.
There.
When commuting on the road to the trailhead, the suspension doesn't cause any weird issues either.
All right, that's pointlessly fun. Good job.
Descending. Every bike is crafted with a mix of design goals. Santa Cruz might need to get a booth at the local farmer's market because this crafting is what I'd call artisan. The 64.5-degree head tube angle is spot on and allows for a weight bias that can afford some leeway in line choice. The wheelbase is enough to keep things stable, but it feels shorter than it measures, likely due to the slack seat angle and shorter top tube. The bike can be easily whipped through tight, awkward corners. If it's nicely tacky out and you can get plenty of traction, the frame stiffness and geometry are spot on to pump your way through the corners like an aging BMXer will always do. But when it's dry and dusty and traction is missing to the point that it's pictured on the back of a milk carton, the Hightower has the balance you need to be able to slide through all the loose corners. I'm mentioning how malleable the Hightower is to the rider because that's why this bike is as good as it is. On longer, more epic rides, you'll start out at a full coffee and vinegar pace, excited to jib and get buck wild.
Trail speed, jump. Should work. Worked last time. I'll move this leaf, make it easier. All right, nice and slow through the steep stuff. Nice and chill.
The Hightower responds well to this. Then at lunchtime, you're cruising through mileage at a sporty pace, and the Hightower can definitely feel racy as you talk about your kudos and PRs. And in the afternoon, as the shadows get as long as your yawns and desires for that burrito, the Hightower is forgiving to that bonked pilot who really should have listened to his wife to not add the bonus single track.
Unfortunately, Logan's down for the count. He's feeling pretty sick, so I made a phone call to my friend Dennis here, who also works for NSMB. If you're not familiar with NSMB, it's a pretty cool online website. Every website's online, Jeff. All about mountain biking, and it's centered in the Vancouver area. The Hightower on a pretty technical trail here on the North Shore. Should you get this bike for separate riding? I think this thing can do it, and I think we can have fun. And there's all kinds of ways you could tweak this thing to be absolutely perfect for a trail like this. Let's take it out of its comfort zone, play around a little bit, and have an excuse for a good time with making this video. That's pretty chill.
Suspension. The RockShox Lyric Ultimate performed great. Fox gets so much coverage, but RockShox is extremely competitive, to the point that it is somewhat slept on. When doing big drops or jumps, I would dial in the maximum high-speed compression, and wouldn't mind more, but it was a subtle thing. For the bike's design intent as an all-around bike, it was absolutely appropriate. I wanted to try a 160mm fork, as the bike is compatible, and in the fast sections of trail, the 150 fork would feel a little bit short. The Super Deluxe Ultimate Shock not only squeezes 3 adjectives into a singular product name, but it does work great. I found the bike to be nicely supportive both on jump landings and when compressing into the bike, pumping and trying to get that air in the first place. The suspension isn't as active as the Bronson's, but it's sufficient to handle the variety of conditions that Goldilocks will inevitably be experiencing. As I had that 210x55mm Cane Creek Tygone shock on hand from the Ripmo, I met up with Sam from Cane Creek and we mounted it to the Hightower. Santa Cruz does not recommend coil shocks for the Hightower, but the Tygone does indeed fit. The 400-pound spring is perhaps slightly firm for my 175 pounds. The coil shock had a slightly better small bump compliance, but it was valved a bit firmer than I'd like, and I would not call it a game changer.
That's a fun one.
After experiencing it for a couple weeks, I don't think a coil shock really fits within the design intent of the Hightower in the first place. Now, I did get a Cascade link about a week ago, and just haven't had a chance to ride it yet. If you'd like to see a long travel Hightower vid, let me know down in the comments, because I'd love an excuse to mount up both that link and a 160mm fork.
Oh, I haven't done one of those in a while. Hit the subscribe button if your average cross-country ride includes a bad suicide no-hander. I'm sure we'll get tens of subscribers this way.
Even more if we show them the spoon.
Yeah, we can all relate to that.
Complaints. The integrated headset. Well, this is not a deal breaker, it's a minor detail, but if it loosens up at all, which mine definitely did, it will creak and pop. This can be solved by frequently tightening the front end or by running more thin shims under the headset top cap. I didn't really care much, I was too busy having fun to lose sleep over such a triviality. The rear shock uses a custom bearing contraption on the rear eyelet, right where it contacts the linkage. I did not have any problems with it, but when I swapped over to the Cane Creek shock, I experienced how involved it is to remove that bearing from the stock shock. There are specialty tools you need to remove it, and sure enough, this is something that other bikes definitely do not require. Our solution was to just put a traditional DU bushing back in there. I've ridden the bike pretty hard over the last few weeks, and no play is yet developed. Cane Creek tells me they can get about 6 months or so without issue running just a DU bushing, but I can't verify. Anyhow, this only affects folks that are going to be changing shocks a whole bunch, so probably not a big deal. Oh, and I found the stock bars to be very low and very, very stiff. My hands actually hurt pretty good, and when I swapped over to some Renthal fat bars, not only was the higher 40mm rise much appreciated, but they felt much more compliant, just the ideal porridge. Conclusion. I came in expecting this bike to be what some of you said it was, a 29-inch Bronson. But wow, what I actually found was that this is the bike I wanted to use to cover miles all across town, as well as all around in the woods. While the Bronson wants to play, the Hightower can play, but knows we've got to put in the miles before and after that session. The Hightower compares to all the modern bikes in some great ways, and I covered this in depth with the differences between Hightower, Bronson, Ripmo, Stumpy, SB140, Switchblade, etc. in my recent trail bike comparison video. I'll link to that in the YouTube description down below. In a given year, I spend time riding in Western Washington State and Southwestern British Columbia, randomly in Oregon, California, and Arizona. And if I only had one bike to bring to all these spots, the Hightower would be a quality candidate. I tend to prefer long travel bikes, especially those with 160 forks, but will admit they then become overkill on tamer terrain. In that case, I love having a complementary bike, like a hardtail, but then we've lost the whole idea of that one Goldilocks ride. If I could only have one, a Hightower can capture the essence of the 30-mile backcountry boogie just as well as the jam around on the local flow trails.
That's kind of cool.